welcome to this deep dive into something pretty unique. I think a Christian evangelical devotional.
Yeah.
Um, and this one is all about how to discover your own personal destiny and then how to actually fight for it.
Mm.
So,
You know, that idea of fighting is really what sets this devotional apart. It uses this metaphor throughout, and, it really piqued my interest when I first started reading it.
yeah, me too. And it makes you wonder, right, like what kind of fight are we even talking about here? Is this like battling other people?
Right.
Or is it something more internal?
That is a great question, and the devotional actually addresses that right away.
Okay.
It makes it very clear that this isn't about, like physical combat or anything like that.
Yeah.
Instead, it's much more about wrestling with the things that hold you back.
Right.
The things that keep you from living out what you believe is God's plan for you.
Okay.
So doubts, distractions, fears.
So it's more of a fight for clarity and purpose then.
Exactly. It's about actively pursuing that clarity and purpose rather
Yeah.
than just waiting for them to kind of magically appear.
Okay.
And, one of the things that I thought was so fascinating about this devotional is that it really emphasizes the importance of memory in this fight.
Memory. Now, that's not something I would have expected.
Right.
So how does memory become a weapon then?
Well, think about it this way. How often do you forget something important?
Oh, gosh, all the time.
Right. Maybe a brilliant idea or a promise you made to someone or even a valuable insight that you gained.
Oh, yeah. I'm the queen of the lost to-do list.
Right.
My memory is like a sieve.
We all have those moments.
Yeah.
But you know what this devotional suggests is that forgetting spiritual insights and guidance can actually lead you further away from your destiny.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like if you forget the map, you're never going to get to the destination.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And the devotional takes this idea even deeper by using a story from the Bible about Joseph and his brothers.
Right.
Remember how Joseph correctly interpreted his dreams, predicting that one day he would rule over his whole family?
Right.
But imagine if he had forgotten those dreams.
Oh, wow, yeah.
His whole life might have gone in a completely different direction.
That's a really powerful example.
Yeah.
But how do we actually improve our memory when it comes to these things?
Right.
I mean, do we just start carrying around little notebooks everywhere?
Well, the devotional does suggest journaling and active reflection.
Okay.
But I think it goes beyond that.
Okay.
It's about being more present, more mindful of the messages and insights that you're receiving,
Yeah.
whether through prayer, through meditation, or even just through quiet reflection. It's about recognizing those moments when they happen
Okay.
and then really kind of holding on to them.
So it's about being intentional, not just with our actions, but like our thoughts and our awareness.
Absolutely. And, the devotional dives into some really specific techniques for cultivating that kind of intentionality,
Got it.
which we can explore more later on.
Now that you mention it, the devotional also talks about something called incomplete revelation.
Yes.
And it uses that very intriguing story about Jacob
Yeah.
and the prophecy that was given concerning his son Joseph. And what was revealed to Jacob was that his son would both become a slave
Right.
and also a prime minister.
Wow. That's a powerful story
Yeah.
because it highlights how prophetic guidance, or really even just God's guidance in general, might be revealed
Okay.
over time.
Right.
Just imagine how disheartening it must have been for Jacob to
Certainly.
hear that his son would be a slave.
That's definitely not the news any parent wants to hear.
Exactly. But the prophecy, or, the revelation in this case,
I-
wasn't the full story.
No.
Joseph did become a slave,
Yeah.
but he eventually rose to become prime minister.
Yeah.
So at that moment, Jacob might have lost hope. He only had part of the picture.
I've definitely had moments in my life where I felt like I was going through something that just felt difficult or unfair,
Yeah.
only to realize later that it was actually leading me to something much better.
That's a great example
Yeah.
of how this concept can really play out in our own lives.
Yep.
It's a reminder to trust in that bigger picture,
Okay.
even when we don't understand why certain things are happening.
It sounds like this devotional is really all about finding that deeper level of trust. But it also acknowledges that sometimes it's hard to even know what God is trying to say to you in the first place. Like,
Yeah.
how do you even know?
That's a common struggle.
Yeah.
And the devotional addresses that really directly by actually quoting the book of Job.
Okay.
It says, "For God speaks in one way,
Okay.
and in two, the man perceives it not." And let's be honest, it can
Yeah.
be super frustrating.
Oh,
really.
especially because we are just bombarded with information and opinions
Yeah.
from every direction these days. It's
Right.
like, how are you supposed to
Yeah.
cut through all that noise and hear
Yeah.
what God is actually saying?
That is the question for the ages,
Yeah.
isn't it? And the devotional offers some guidance on that.
Okay.
It talks about how it's so important to cultivate a sensitivity to God's voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that starts by slowing down
Right.
and creating space for silence and reflection.
Yeah, it's like hitting the pause button on the whole world
Mm-hmm.
for a little bit so you can tune into a different frequency.
Exactly. It's about creating that kind of inner sanctuary
Okay.
where you can actually hear that still small voice
Right.
amidst all the chaos.
Which reminds me, there's this passage in the devotional that I thought was really interesting,
Okay.
where it talks about how important it is to, like, clean the airwaves, so to
Yeah.
speak. What did you make of that?
That's such a great image,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's really acknowledging that all of the noise of the world,
Yeah.
you know, the distractions, the anxieties,
Mm.
all the external pressures
Right.
can really clog up your ability to actually receive those, you know, those crucial revelations about your path.
Yeah, it's like your spiritual antenna is getting all this interference
Yes.
from all the static of modern life.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the devotional really encourages you to actively clear those channels,
Okay.
to reduce the volume of the world so you can tune into a different frequency,
Okay.
one that's more aligned with your purpose.
I love that. But how do you actually do that?
Yeah.
It's not like you can just flip a switch
Right.
and suddenly be free from all distractions.
It's definitely an ongoing process.
Yeah.
But the devotional suggests that practices like prayer,
Okay.
meditation, and intentional stillness can make a really big difference.
Okay.
And, you know, it's interesting how it connects this idea back to memory,
Oh, right.
which we were discussing earlier.
Yeah, because if you're constantly bombarded with distractions,
Yes.
it's going to be even harder to remember those important messages and insights that you have received.
Exactly. It's like a double whammy.
Right.
The noise makes it harder to hear,
Yeah.
and it makes it harder to remember.
Wow.
So cultivating that inner stillness becomes even more important.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? In a world that is so obsessed
Yeah.
with busyness and productivity,
Mm-hmm.
are we losing touch with that deeper wisdom
Right.
that comes from silence and reflection?
That's such a profound question. And, you know, it makes me think about how this devotional,
Mm-hmm.
while it's rooted in the Christian faith,
Yeah.
it really speaks to like this universal human need,
Right.
this longing to understand our place in the world
Mhm.
and to live a life of meaning.
Yeah. Regardless of your specific beliefs, I think we all grapple with those questions.
Absolutely.
Like, what am I here for?
Yeah.
What's my unique contribution?
Mm-hmm.
What's the point?
Right. And this devotional, in its own way, offers a framework for approaching those questions. You know, not from a place of fear and uncertainty,
Right.
but with a sense of empowered purpose.
Okay.
It encourages you to recognize that you have a destiny to fight for.
Mm-hmm.
You have a path to forge.
Okay.
Even if it's not always clear
Right.
from the outset.
That's a really powerful message.
Yeah.
But it also kind of brings up another challenge for me,
Okay.
which is like, how do you stay resilient and motivated when the path does get tough?
Right.
Because this devotional doesn't shy away from the fact that there are going to be obstacles and setbacks
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
along the way.
And it brings us back to that story of Jacob and the prophecy about Joseph.
Right.
You know, it would have been so easy for Jacob to just lose hope
Oh, yeah.
when he heard that his son was going to become a slave.
Can only imagine.
But the story highlights how important it is to trust the process.
Yeah.
Even when it's painful or confusing, because
Mhm.
sometimes what appears to be a detour or a setback
Right.
is actually a crucial part of your development.
It's like those winding paths in a beautiful garden.
Yeah.
Like, you might not know where you're going at first,
Right.
but eventually you reach this breathtaking vista.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It reminds us that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
And that even the unexpected twists and turns can lead to incredible growth and transformation.
Exactly. And this devotional encourages you to embrace those challenges,
Right.
to view them as opportunities to strengthen your faith and to refine your purpose.
Right. And there's one passage in the devotional that I found really striking,
Okay.
where it talks about this prayer asking for heavenly breaks in this time of Ichabod.
Ichabod. Now, there's a word you don't hear every day.
I know, right?
It's a Hebrew word that literally translates to the glory has departed.
Wow.
And in the context of this devotional,
Right.
it's referring to a sense of spiritual emptiness
Yeah.
or a disconnection from the divine.
So it's like we're living in this time where it's really easy to get caught up in the material world and lose sight of that deeper connection to something greater than ourselves.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the prayer for heavenly breaks is like this plea
Okay.
for a moment of pause,
Wow.
a time to really step back from the frenetic pace of life
Yeah.
and reconnect with that spiritual core.
It's like hitting the pause button.
Mm-hmm.
Only this time, it's not just about silencing the external noise.
Right.
It's about really tuning into that inner voice,
Yes.
that still small voice that can guide us back to what truly matters.
Exactly. And it makes me think about how this devotional ties the idea of heavenly breaks to the concept of discernment,
Okay.
which we were talking about earlier.
Right, because in a world that's constantly vying for our attention,
Yeah.
it can be so hard to distinguish between, like, our own desires
Right.
and what we truly believe
Yeah.
God is calling us to do.
It's a constant process of discernment, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it requires a lot of honesty, humility, and a willingness to surrender your ego's agenda.
Which brings us back to the idea of fighting, right?
Yes.
It's not just about pushing forward
Right.
with brute force.
Mm-hmm.
It's also about surrendering
Right.
to a higher power and allowing yourself to be guided.
It's a beautiful paradox, isn't it? The fight and the surrender,
Yeah.
the strength and the humility.
And this devotional reminds you that you have access to both within yourself.
Exactly.
You have the resilience to overcome obstacles,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the wisdom to know when to let go.
Yes, and to trust that
Okay.
even when you can't see the full picture, God is working through you,
Okay.
guiding you toward a destiny
Yeah.
that is both unique and meaningful.
Now, for our listener who might be feeling a little lost right now or uncertain,
Right.
what encouragement would you offer
Mm-hmm.
based on what we've explored in this devotional?
First and foremost, I would say, remember that you're not alone.
Okay.
There is a power greater than yourself that is always available to you,
Right.
a source of strength and guidance that you can tap into through prayer, meditation, or whatever practices resonate with your soul.
And remember that your journey is uniquely yours.
Yes.
You know, don't compare yourself to others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't get caught up in the shoulds
Right.
and the supposed tos of the world.
Instead, focus on cultivating a deep connection with your own inner wisdom, that still small voice that whispers your truth
Yeah.
and guides you towards your highest potential.
And be willing to fight for what you believe in.
Yes.
Not with aggression or force,
Mm-hmm.
but with the unwavering conviction that you are worthy of living a life
Right.
of purpose and meaning.
Because you are.
Yeah.
Each and every one of us is.
Mm-hmm.
And this devotional reminds us that the power to create that life lies within us,
Right.
waiting to be unleashed.
Beautifully said. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I want to circle back to the devotional's call to action for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not enough to simply understand these concepts intellectually.
Absolutely. It's about putting these ideas into practice.
Right.
And taking concrete steps to move toward your destiny.
Okay.
And the devotional offers some very specific advice on how to do that.
Okay.
For example, it talks about the importance of walking by faith, not by sight.
Yeah, that's a classic piece of wisdom, but what does that actually look like
Right.
in everyday life?
Well, it means trusting in God's plan even when you can't see the full picture.
Okay.
It means being willing to step out in faith even when you feel uncertain or maybe even a little afraid.
So it's about moving beyond your comfort zone,
Yeah.
embracing the unknown and trusting that things will work out.
Exactly. And it's about being willing to take action even when you don't have all the answers.
Right.
Because sometimes the answers reveal themselves through the action.
Yeah, it reminds me of that saying, the journey
Mhm.
of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Yes. And this devotional really encourages you to take that first step
Okay.
and then the next and the next,
Mm-hmm.
trusting that God will guide you along the way.
And it reminds you that you don't have to go it alone.
Right.
You know, you have the support of your faith community. You can seek guidance from spiritual mentors.
Right.
And you have the unwavering love of a higher power
Yeah.
to draw on.
It's about recognizing that you're part of something so much bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And that by aligning yourself with that divine purpose, you tap into a source of strength and wisdom that goes beyond your own limited understanding.
And all of this circles back to that central metaphor in the devotional of the fight.
Yeah.
It's a fight for clarity, a fight for purpose,
Right.
and ultimately a fight for living at your full potential.
Absolutely.
As God intended.
It is.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive,
Okay.
I'm going to leave our listener with a challenge that's inspired by the devotional's call to action.
I love it.
What is one step that you can take today to fight for the destiny that you believe God has for you?
You know, it doesn't have to be this huge life-altering step. It could be something small but meaningful. Something that moves you in the direction of your dreams.
Maybe it's finally making that phone call that you've been putting off, or setting aside some time for prayer and reflection.
Or reaching out to a mentor, or taking a class to learn a new skill.
Yeah, whatever it is, take that step with courage and conviction.
Absolutely.
Trust that you're being guided and supported every step of the way.
Yes, and remember that every step you take, no matter how small it may seem, is a victory in the fight for your destiny.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it was insightful and inspiring for you.
Yes. May you find clarity and courage and the unwavering belief that you can achieve anything that you set your mind to.
Until next time, keep fighting the good fight.
Yes.
May your journey be filled with purpose and meaning and the boundless love of a higher power.